Showtime. And we're live. All right. Welcome back to the All Things Aged Care Weekly Wrap-Up. My name is Anthony Nguyen, aged care recruitment expert and host of the Pioneers in Aged Care podcast. If you're looking for a clinical, management, or executive position in aged care, or if you want to be on the podcast, just let me know. Next, we have Robert Covino, founder and CEO of Mirus Australia. He led the creation of technologies like Mirus Metrics and Care Minute Manager, and now Mirus Plus, an AI-powered platform uniting software and data to streamline everything from admissions to compliance. Rounding out our hosting crew is Owen Matheson, strategic connector and founder of Mission Critical Group. He works with owners, boards, and executives with a knack for connecting the right people, opportunity, and capital to unlock growth and drive innovation. And our very special guest for today is the General Manager, Growth and Innovation, Advisory Care and Partnerships. She is a practical disruptor dedicated to equity, inclusion, and dementia support. With decades of experience, she practices relationship-centered leadership that amplifies ignored voices. She challenges the status quo to shift systems rather than ticking boxes and ensures aged care works for the people who need it most. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise the roof for Marie Alford.
Yes,
sorry, Alford or Alford? I asked you the same thing on the podcast.
I know it's Alford, but that's okay.
Alford.
We'll forgive you. We'll forgive you, Tony.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Anthony.
Yeah, she got me.
So Barry, I'm glad you clarified that. So Marie, we know that a passion for you is dementia. Is that a lifelong thing? Where did that start for you?
Oh, look, such a great question. I'm so pleased to be here on this podcast with three gentlemen. Given that this industry is heavily weighted by women, it's great to have a female on your podcast today and talking all things aged care and dementia. So, it's a really hard question to answer because it doesn't lean into everything I say now. Because if you asked me in university, did I want to work in aged care or dementia, it would have been a no deal, no thanks, not at all interested. In fact, I don't think I know that when the aged care elective came round, I went, oh no, not interested in that either. As lots of people, when you're going through uni, you have this idea of what you might want to be when you grow up or do. And I wanted to work in a field that was, sexy and disruptive and, a bit on the edge, a bit sort of risky. So I went into a range of different areas before I took some time off when my parents died. And when I went back into the workforce, I took a job in here in South Australia, back with what was then Alzheimer's Australia, South Australia. Yes. Yeah. Now, big confession. So this is like 24 years ago. Big confession. When I took the job, I took it thinking, oh, it'll be a 9-to-5 job. It'll get me back into the working routine. Use my brain. It's not really an area of passion, so I won't have to think too much. It'll just be 9-to-5, as I said. Wow, here I am, a couple of decades later. Wouldn't really want to work anywhere else because I think I've said this to Anthony before. Aged care has sex, drugs, rock and roll. You want to disrupt the place you want to disrupt. You want to be risk taker. This is the place to take risks, and it's just such a privilege to work with people with dementia and those that care for them, either informally or formally. And also, I have personal experience. I've had family members with dementia. I now have friends with dementia, and I love the fact that I can say that I have friends living well with dementia. It is everything. So now when I speak to university students, I'm going, don't be like me. Do the aged care initiative, do the placements in aged care and in subacute hospital systems and geriatric placements. It's just so important.
So if you want sex, drugs and rock and roll, aged care is top of the list. We are bringing sexy back to aged care, or we're just making it known that sexy is in aged care.
Having spent time in an aged care home, this is what I see. I see all of these things. I hear rock and roll playing, sometimes on Daru.
They're rocking out.
I see sex and, there's a lot of drugs, but maybe not the right sort of drugs. Maybe we want to get rid of some of those antipsychotics. So, yeah.
I love your honesty. So literally you're going, well, I'll just take this as a token, you know, who knows where it'll end up. It's a stepping stone, and here you are decades later, still on that stepping stone, but obviously so many different learnings. I mean, in terms of Alzheimer's to dementia, is there anything for us to know? I mean, for those playing at home that aren't aware of the official sort of definitions or the space, could you explain the differences, starting with Alzheimer and then into dementia, and why you love this area so much?
Look, I call it my Uber driver question, because when I'm in an Uber and I get asked what I do, the first question is, so what's the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? You know, there's lots of ways to describe it. I like to use the analogy of a tea tray with teacups. And look, it's Friday afternoon. I could use the drinks cart with the, you know, cocktail bottles on there. But if we go with teacups for now, so when you think of all the different sorts of tea, you've got green tea, chamomile, Earl Grey, breakfast, English breakfast, black tea. Like, there's lots of different forms of tea, but they're all tea at the end of the day. So dementia is like that. So dementia is the overarching term for all these types, all these diseases that sit under that heading. So Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. And so sometimes when people say he's got dementia, it's like, well, okay, it's not necessarily going to be Alzheimer's. What type of dementia? So Alzheimer's disease might present primarily with memory loss issues initially, whereas a frontal lobe dementia, as the name suggests, will impact the frontal lobes, which control our impulse control and sometimes our behaviours. Lewy body dementia presents much more with hallucinations and delusions. And of course, vascular dementia is related to our heart. So that looks a little different as well. So they're all slightly different. They're all dementias, but it's really important for us to know what type of dementia when we're working with people, because it can change the way that we approach and interact with them.
Are there some great resources out there for those who are, you know, the sandwich generation, where we're trying to do the best thing by our parents, knowing that they raised us and they made a lot of sacrifices to put us on the right path and support our dreams? How do we better care for our parents in terms of is there some good recommended reading or sites or resources?
Oh, look, so much reading out there. It can be a little bit of a maze to navigate. And I was reflecting this week on a post from Natalie Siegel-Brown, the Inspector General of Aged Care, who was talking about the navigation nightmare of my aged care. So finding information, like, God bless Google and AI. We have access to more information now than we ever had. When I started in this field a couple of decades ago, knowing nothing about dementia, you know, I was trying to read books and help sheets, but now you've got great tools that really help you deep dive into those questions and resources. So I think it's always really important to look for those. Be careful of what people find on the internet as well. But there's a great book at the moment that I'm reading. See if I can grab it from just down here without making too much noise. If it comes up on the screen, The Unexpected Journey from Emma Willis. So Bruce Willis's wife. That's a really nice and easy read about dementia and caregivers. Focuses a bit on frontal lobe dementia because that's what Bruce has, but also talks about other forms. Great videos. Look, we're really blessed in Australia, and I think we actually look internationally all the time for what is best practice. We do things really well. So accessing resources here, you've got Dementia Australia, you've got Dementia Support Australia, and just to make it even more confusing, Dementia Training Australia. All three of those big dementia bodies have acres and acres of resources that help people. 2 24-hour-a-day helplines accessible as well for people if they had questions or want information or support. So there's a lot out there. It's actually making sure that you take the time to get the best information, but also build some peer networks and talk to people.
Love that.
Marie, you work for a fairly large organization in Hammond Care. There's a lot going on, a lot of innovations happening there. Can you talk us through the latest at Hammond Care?
Yeah, look, Hammond Care, obviously we have a portfolio that includes residential aged care, home care. Big shout out to any home care providers who are watching, because it's, 1st of November. It's been a bit of a challenging
Yes.
first month. Woo!
Stay strong, guys.
Stay strong. We've got this. We also have a couple of hospitals and health precincts, but we have a portfolio, a relatively newly launched one that I think you're referring to. We launched it at the Aging Australia conference called Hammond Innovations. So Hammond Innovations brings together 3 portfolios that have existed in Hammond Care for a while. So the Centre for Positive Aging, which, as the name says on the box, is all about re-ablement and supporting people to age well. And there's a lot of research that they've done over the years, a lot of investment in programs like Arts on Prescription. And so this is about getting those messages out. The Palliative Centre, again, we like to name things easily. It's all about supporting life. And finally, the portfolio that I worked in the longest, which is the Dementia Centre, been around for 30 years, which delivers our core programs of the Dementia Support Australia, behaviour support programs, but invests in research and consultancy and education around design, behaviour support, engagement, and a whole range of other things that are really important to this sector. So Hammond Innovations brings all of those 3 hot houses together in one place. And it's about harnessing all of that knowledge. We've been doing research for a long time. And, what can happen when you're so invested in making a difference and doing that research is you sometimes forget to use your research and translate it into practical change. And so Hammond Innovations is harnessing all of that work now, but also looking for partners and collaborators on some of the big issues in aged care at the moment. Things about how we actually really do keep people at home longer. Support at home might be the funding mechanism, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. We need to think technology. We need to integrate real life care in there as well. And what do we already have? Let's not reinvent the wheel. And what's out there in other industries, not aged care specific, that we can actually lean into and learn from and use to make care better.
I love that. And I think also it's very important and this is a stat, it still blows my mind, but this year alone, dementia is the leading cause of death for Australians. And a lot of people just think it's cardiovascular disease or heart disease. And it's been the leading cause of death for females for years in Australia. So 2/3 of women are more likely to have dementia than males. And I think what I loved about Bruce Willis's wife's book about that is it does bring, I guess, another perspective to the male journey of dementia. And I think that's something that I've experienced, a frontal lobe decline with a Lewy body dementia, which is related to the Parkinson's and my father-in-law. And just to help families even understand what the prognosis and the pathways are, because you're just holding on. It's a very different journey than you have. And so certainly a lot of that discussion, I know for families out there who have experienced it, would be very much welcomed. And also those support networks that are around the families, the carers, are so important. And so I love all of the aspects that you're discussing. I guess, where do you see the long-term play? Do we have a cure for this? Is it something that we can, deal with in different ways than it happens today? I'd just be very, very intrigued to know where we're up to with that research. And
yeah, again, we're so lucky that there's been such an investment in this area. I think there's a couple of things here. So you talked about cardiovascular and now dementia being the leading cause of disease. I was talking this morning at a workshop at a retirement village I was at around I don't know who's old enough on here to remember, Norm, Life Be In It. So Norm was a little fat cartoon guy sat on the couch watching TV. Yeah. It was all about Norm getting out there and being active because it was good for his heart. Now, cardiovascular disease down the leading cause of death. So, what this tells us is there are opportunities for us to talk about things that are what we call modifiable risk factors. And we're not saying that they will prevent dementia, but they modify your risk and they may delay the onset of some forms of dementia. And the Lancet Commission says around 45% of dementias may be delayed or prevented by looking at some of these modifiable risk factors, which are not rocket science. It's exercise, it's a good diet, watching your alcohol intake, diabetes, blood pressure, and then some new ones around sleep, getting good quality, not just getting sleep, but good quality sleep. And as a middle-aged menopausal woman, got to tell you, that's a challenge, but it's really important because at night is when our little brains get to flush out the toxins and reset for tomorrow. So that's a really important factor. And hearing loss being checked as well. So they're modifiable factors. What that also says is that there are some, sometimes it's beyond our control to do anything, and it is genetic or there are other factors at play. But on the cure side, there's been a huge investment in this area, and we're starting to see some small glimmers of hope into the future for some types of dementia. So you were talking frontal lobe and Lewy body. That's probably a little bit further away. The focus has very much been on Alzheimer's disease because we've understood that a lot better than some of we call them rarer dementias. They're not that rare, but they're less common than Alzheimer's disease. So there's some great things happening in that space now. Not cure, but again, slowing down the progression, which is great because if you can give someone another 5, 8, 10 years of living well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that you brought Norm up. That's like a real blast from the past there, Marie. Right. He's like for the kids playing at home, that's like the Homer Simpson of our generation. And in terms of Norm, it was a lot around a focus around diet as well. Is there anything around, that we're better informed around our dietary choices to reduce dementia?
100%. So Mediterranean diet, so a long time ago, we thought fats were bad for us, but actually your brain needs fats, the good fats. So avocado oil, really good extra virgin olive oil, the omegas from the salmons. Now, when I was talking to the group this morning, who I had so much fun with, it was like, doesn't mean you can't have your cake. Like, I don't want to be one of those people who's sitting here saying, I want you to live on this very strict diet and then you'll never get dementia, because I'm going to suck all the life out of you, all the fun out of you. But actually, it's about balance. And so we need to be thinking, in moderation. And, that goes for alcohol as well. Things in moderation are fine. It's when we tip over the edge, but you need to balance that with exercise. So cardio, but also strength training as well. So all of those things come together. For me, it's really interesting because we talk about the new kid on the block, which is sleep. But unless you do all the other things, the exercise, the good diet, being socially engaged and keeping up your, social activities, then your sleep suffers as well. So you can start to see why all these things and how all these things work together.
I love that thought around active communities. In terms of your Hammond innovation focus, how are you sort of looking at that around creating greater engagement, social engagement, to encourage active lifestyle and, choices?
It's one of those things, over the last couple of years, there's been this real growth in robots and robotics in this space. I have a foot in both camps here. I'm like, they're kind of cute and a bit, fun-ish. Some of them are quite terrifying to look at as well. Some are a little bit too realistic.
Especially if you're half asleep.
I just don't, So I think from an engagement perspective, we're sort of looking at how does technology integrate, again, with the human aspect of care. So I was watching something and had a colleague come back from a conference where they saw a robot calling bingo, but the robot needed 2 people either side to program the robot to help it do bingo. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. But could they not just have the people deliver? But the robot was also a little bit kitsch and a little bit funny. And so the residents really engaged with it. So I think, we need to see how we can balance some of those things to keep people engaged. But technology is great in terms of keeping people socially connected when they can't get to things. And we learnt that really fast during COVID. Things that we never thought we'd do in aged care with tablets and, FaceTime became the only way we had to communicate. Now, we don't want to go back to that, but we want to make sure that that's another way to keep people connected. Virtual communities are vitally important for those who can't get out of their home, but we want people to get out. We want people to get out into their community groups, into their normal activities. So if they were golfers, because they have dementia, it becomes more difficult. It's difficult for me. I don't have dementia, hitting that ball down the fairway. But when you have dementia, the idea of playing golf with people who don't have dementia becomes really confronting. And so how can we help them? And that's through the virtual golf that we can bring into either their home or their aged care home, but also modifying the activity with their care workers so they can still go out there and hit the balls and feel like they have some of their purpose back.
Absolutely.
I want to give a shout out to a couple of people who are commenting in the chat section here. We've got Libby Hema. We raised the roof for Libby.
We love Libby. Long time friend of the show.
And then we've got a few questions.
And recently married.
Yes,
congratulations,
Libby. Yeah, yes.
Your new
Congrats,
chapter
Libby.
of life. Very exciting.
We'll do a golf clap.
Yes.
I think you need to do a shout out to the person who said Anthony is a cutie. I mean,
look out.
Come on.
That was a very, very kind comment there. Thank you very much. But moving on, because I'm blushing now. But no, we've got questions from Linda Henderson, Kamal Gruel.
Yes.
First question, if you can tackle this, Marie. Is the Dignity Dementia Design Manifesto being used by Hammond Care?
Wow, great question, Linda. So obviously Hammond Care has got a long history in design. And, what I'm really pleased to see, so we've been building the small cottage model, now known as the household model more commonly. We've been building that for 30 years. It was really nice last year to see that the Commonwealth brought out the National Design Guidelines and Principles, which actually lean into everything we've been doing for 30 years. So whilst we don't use the Dignity Dementia Design Manifesto as it is, the elements of that have always been part of who we are and what we do. And, lately, I'm really pleased to say we've really lent into lifting our gaze from the small household model and saying, well, we've been doing this for 30 years. Great, it's in the vernacular of other aged care providers now, but we're moving again into a different demographic. What is the care for people who need, care with others look like into the future? Is it small household model? Is it something different? So we want to be continually innovating in that space. But I think, everything we do leans into the manifesto and ensures that we have the people that are living in the spaces where we work. And, we say it's their home, but let's be honest, it's never really their home, because home is something quite personal to us all. And, home is more of a feeling than a place. So as long, they need to feel safe and seen and heard wherever they live, and that we hear their voices when we're designing as well. So we've got person who lives with dementia who sits on our design review committee when we're looking at builds and new builds, and is part of that conversation as well.
Well, Linda's definitely come up with a lot of commentary here.
A lot of great
but I'm reading one. Is it Kamal at the moment?
Kamal
Cert 3. So can you tell us about maybe the Cert 3? And the question is, aged care doesn't really prepare new workers for the realities of supporting people living with dementia. From your perspective and Hammond Care's experience, how can we bridge this gap? What changes or training models would actually equip the workforce with confidence and skills needed for high quality dementia care?
What a great question. I love this question. You know, I really felt sad during the
Raise
Royal
the roof
Commission.
for Kamal right there.
Yeah. Woo. I really
great
felt sad during the Royal Commission when there was this whole making the Cert 3 mandatory, as if that was going to solve all the problems within aged care. It's, you know, it's a very much a foundational piece of learning. You know, what would solve some of these problems? We have workforce shortages. Nobody's going to deny that. You know, this is not, despite what we all think, it's not a sexy industry. It's hard to encourage people into it. A lot of that's because of, you know, negative media exposure. You know, we're very fast to call out bad stories, and we need to call out bad stories. Don't get me wrong, that's really important. I work in this sector, I see 98% of good stories every day. And we can deal with we can get the 2% out, we can fix that, change that, but we want to be able to sell good news stories so that people want to work in these spaces. You want staff who have a respect and an empathy and an engagement with older people and people with dementia. I've seen really good recruitment processes where they actually put residents in the interview panel.
We might know a guy.
I do like his recruitment videos. Like, you're putting a person living with dementia in recruitment for care workers is vital, because if care workers come in and they say, "Oh, I'm passionate about working with people with age, you know, older people. You know, I like old people," and there's someone with dementia sitting there and they can't talk to them, they don't make eye contact, they don't know how to engage. It's a really good indicator that maybe there's a mismatch here. You can train for some things, and at Hammond Care, we do our own training and learning. You don't have to come to us with a Cert 3. We offer the foundational training, but we also offer very tailored training and coaching and modeling, because everything is about the person. And as individuals, whilst we all have some similarities, we're all wearing black today. Look at us go.
Yes, look at us.
Some similarities, but we are all different. I bet you all of our shoes are different. I bet you what we ate for breakfast is different. Maybe even our coffee orders. And so we want to train. I'd love to show you my shoes. We want to train for all those little idiosyncrasies that the people that we're providing support and care for. I do think, little shout out to the Wicking Centre's MOOC. I do think that's one of the better online courses for foundation dementia training. It's contemporary. It has great voices of lived experience in there. They update it regularly. But I really think it is around, we want people in this industry who want to be in the industry. We're not asking them to stay forever, because this could be a leap pad to something else, but we want them to be in the industry.
Here's a great question. Hey, Rob, you want to ask this one?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it looks like someone in the team is very intrigued about your innovation process. So the question being is, how does Hammond Care, with all the innovation and research you have underway, take forward the innovations and scale that versus leaving in pilot mode? Is it a evaluation criteria? Do you have a committee? Is it based on feeling, resident input, family input?
Yeah, we use the
processes out there.
We use the AWS model, which is always keeping, you know, a chair in the room for the person that we're serving, whoever that is, because
I love that. Yeah, that's great.
Really important. You know, we co-design, so we always have the voices of lived experience as well. You know, what do they say? It's, you know, pilot fast, fail fast. Like, you know, if something's I didn't get that right, but you know what I mean. If something's going to not work. And in that pilot phase, it's really important for us to continue to get feedback, look at whether it's working, and be able to flex and change really quickly. And sometimes what that might mean is we go, this is not the right solution. And we do that by having smaller groups. I think, you know, the things we learn over the years is trying to build things with everyone in the room is so dangerous, because everybody's got an opinion. So you want to have just the key people in there for each phase of that design. And that really helps us iterate and learn and get to that next phase. And so then we're only scaling things that have evidence behind them of impact and aren't
Love that.
duplicating things as well. So sometimes it's okay to go, that was a great pilot. And look, beyond Ham Innovations, many years ago, we ran a pilot with assistance dogs for people living with dementia at home. It was a pilot project. It never went anywhere after the pilot project because there were a couple of reasons. It was a really interesting pilot, cost a lot of money. For those that worked for it, worked well, but there were other organisations out there that were doing similar things that could take our learnings and integrate them, rather than us saying this is something we want to scale within our business. So sometimes it's about handing the pilot phase over to someone else because we've learned, and now it's actually sector appropriate for the sector to take it on as well.
I love that. That's great.
We did have Ruben Jacob on the show a few weeks ago. Are you collaborating with ARIA at all, this being their kind of mandate and passion?
This is ARIA's jam. So Ruben and I, we talk a lot. He's very much connected to what we do because, again, they are heavily in this space and doing a lot of great work. And so we don't want to duplicate.
Raising the roof for ARIA.
Love that team. So I think it's really important that we work together, and where there are opportunities for us to potentially pilot or do projects together, we do them together, or lean into each other's learned experience as well. All those things are really important. So, yeah, big fans and love what they do.
Oh, it's the rising tide that lifts all the boats.
Sorry, Rob. Do you want to give any shout outs to anyone in particular? I know there's quite a team there at ARIA. It's nice to name a few of the unsung heroes working hard behind the scenes to make aged care better.
What if I don't say someone's name and then they go, you didn't?
Oh, yes, dangerous territory. A few that come to mind in the interest of time.
You'll get me in trouble with the whole team.
That's right.
I get emails from them all the time with great networks and opportunities for us to be able to leverage, and it's just this, like, it's a really nice sector at the moment. You kind of get the sense that we're all moving in the same direction, and that's really nice, because there were a lot of years in our sector where it was like pistols at dawn, and funding does that to the sector. It's competitive funding for a reason, but more and more we're seeing the sector lean into other parts of the businesses and say, how can we work together to do better for the greater good? So I think that is the nicest thing that I've seen.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of problems.
Can I ask this question from Gillian Woodhouse? And her question is, are the quality and consumer advisory boards working well? What are the benefits and problems?
So I presume this is a residential care wide question, or just a sector wide question. Are they working well? Look, consumer advisory boards are challenging, because you'll get people on a consumer advisory board who want to be there. And I always worry about the voices that we don't hear.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Okay.
I mean, I'm always the first one to put my hand up for an advisory board. I like to have a chat, I like to, shoot the breeze. But, there are a lot of people who I hear things from. And I posted something on LinkedIn earlier this week that, people come to me and they tell me what they see wrong in the sector and some issues with providers or organisations. And it's like, we need to get your voices heard. And so, I think they are working well. I think we need to look at other ways to hear voices, because if we're hearing the same voices over and over again, particularly from consumers, then those people who are nervous that they might, disrupt their funding or upset their provider, or it might have a negative impact on their care. I really fear for some of those more marginalised communities and people that we're not hearing. So I think they're working well. I think we need to find a better way to lean into some of those other voices.
Marie, you're really popular. We've got questions after questions after questions. We've got another one from Ruth Memisa. Can you share how you measure whether your training actually improves the lived experience of people with dementia, not just care and knowledge?
Yeah,
God,
the empirical data, the outcomes.
I love these questions because you know everyone
and Rob
loves
can weigh in afterwards with his numbers.
Everyone loves a happy sheet after a training session, don't they? So you've just finished a one-day workshop, and you know you've got all this information in your head, and they give you the sheet, and you circle all the smiles, you give everything 10, and then you go back to your workplace, and it really becomes, you know, the busyness of the workday, or the leadership actually go, well, we don't do things like that. They might have said that. So this is such a great question. We try to deliver less training and more coaching, modeling, and mentoring. So the training sort of sits over here. So training is a necessary evil. You have to do it. Classroom-based training is always difficult in aged care, hard to get people off the floor. We find that coaching, modeling, and mentoring on the ground, so small groups, someone who's working and walking alongside the care staff, gets much better uptake and capacity and capability building, and builds an internal network of champions on the floor. Yes. But it also starts at the top. So, you know, if we are doing training, I always want to talk to the leadership teams about what are their expectations, what are their goals, and how are they going to connect those two things, because we can support the workforce to deliver better care. But if your leadership team don't live and breathe that, then this is going to fail every time.
I love what you said about the voices of those that aren't being heard. We had Nikki Sloan from Community Industry Group, Nikki and Mark Sewell and Paul as well, Sadler. They've been working together with Kathy Eager, and they've had a whole focus around making sure that the regional stakeholders are being heard, that their lived experience is being weighed, and they're given that support that they need. How do we address this regional voices that are unheard? What are some of the ways we could do that? And obviously a shout out to Nikki, Paul and Mark and Kathy and the great work we're going to raise the roof for you guys and what you're doing with regional workforce.
I mean, and regions are so different, aren't they? So when I think of where I live in South Australia, you've got the Eyre Peninsula, Port Lincoln, then you've got Cooper Pedy. Those two regional areas are very different. And, you know, I see that around Australia as we move around and travel around. So it's like, you know, hearing their voices means taking the megaphone to them and providing opportunity for them to feed into policy. Because it isn't just as easy as creating a regional plan that's going to suit all of Australia, because we are such a big country and it is so different. We do a lot of work in Northern Territory. One of the things after many years of working in that space is really hard to do things if you don't live in Northern Territory, because it's a very different experience. And if you're in Darwin, it's very different than if you're in Alice, and if you're in Tennant Creek, or if you're on the Tiwi Islands. And the only way that we'll create programs and support structures there that really work is to find ways to actually get those voices back into the system. The issue for policy and government is those voices aren't necessarily loud enough cohorts to make it financially viable for them to develop specific programs and services, but they actually already exist. Communities in those areas are already so well networked and integrated. It's all there. It's just a little bit of buffer sometimes to help them be able to bolster their skills and training. We run clinics in regional areas and remote areas, so we're popping in and out. But in between times, they need to have their capability built so they have those resources there. So it's such a challenge. I just think it's something we need to keep an eye on. Regional, remote, and our other marginalised communities, First Nations, LGBTIQ+, and our non-English speaking background cold communities. And veterans. Shout out to the veterans.
Yes, a shout out to all those great people doing the regional clinics, bringing the the opportunity for training and support, but also bringing that megaphone. That is part of our passion and vision with all things aged care, is to bring that megaphone. And we've got our open mic segment of the show now, and we can hear those voices. We can see the voices in writing, but we're actually going to have some people join us in the studio now. Is that right, Anne?
No, well, we've actually no one's lined up. No one's clicked the link. If anyone does want to click the link, it's there in the description. Right. So we're just going to keep rolling with these questions. We're getting so many questions.
Yes.
Well, before we get into it, we'll take a quick break because I did want to give a special person a shout out. I want to give a quick shout out to Kelvin Neve, the CEO of Doherty Apartments. And he just won 2 awards. So Doherty Apartments, they're a standalone aged care facility in Chatswood in Sydney. And for them to win these 2 awards at the Future of Aging Awards from Inside Aging. So Kelvin won the Leader of the Year. And Doherty Apartments won the Technology, I can't read the other, but Technology Consumer. So big shout out to them for a standalone facility. That's huge.
And do we know more about what they're doing there, so we can give them a shout out around their approach to market or the things they're doing differently?
I off the top of my head, I could probably get a few things wrong, but I've been meaning to get. There is they did adopt one of the early adopters of VR technology, virtual reality. I think it's Neurons VR.
Yes, and Shane in the team. Yep.
So they're well, I'm not going to spoil it, but I've been planning on getting Kelvin on the podcast to get him to share everything that he's been doing. But just wanted to give him a quick shout out here.
Fantastic, and we'd love to have Kelvin come join us on a Friday. Beers on the pier, virtual beers on the pier.
That's it. All right, back into the questions. But before we do, Rob, did you have any other facts, figures, stats that are relevant to everything that Bree said?
Absolutely. Well, I guess one of the things, and it's probably more of a question side of it, but there's a lot of myths around, I think, what people appreciate the dementia to be. I mean, even in certain cultures, I carry a lot of Italian heritage, and I remember even doing work in the early days at Scalabrini Village. Unfortunately, the funding mechanism required to have a dementia label, but it was very hard for a lot of the doctors and that culture to, let's say, diagnose a nun, a priest, with something that would be perceived as the devil's work in that concept. But I guess if there was something that we could, I guess, people hear the word dementia, what's the biggest misconception, I guess, you would wish to delete from the public mind about dementia today?
Very good.
Oh, gosh, because there is such stigma around dementia.
Oh, there's so much.
Still, and it is the most feared disease diagnosis over 65 and the second most feared under 65. So you can see why people, take their time to get a diagnosis, which, is oppositional to what is really good. You want an early diagnosis, you want to be in control, you want to be able to access, effective drug treatments that might delay your progression. So what is the biggest myth? I think I think it's still that, you get dementia and that's it, your life's over, like end of story. Wow. Now, just so not the case. We work with a gentleman called Bill Yates. He is a member of our team at Hammond Care. So he works in our Dementia Support Australia program and in our reablement programs as well. He's teaching us so much. He got a diagnosis of dementia. And, of course, when he got that diagnosis, he would be, he talks about the fact that it was, the worst thing that ever happened. But then he started to read and study and learn about it. And since then, he's changed his diet. He's he's an Iron Man. This guy does marathons and Iron Man.
How old is he, Marie?
Now, I think he's over 6. I think he's 65 now. Or 64.
Wow, and he's an Iron Man. That's
he's super. He's super fit. But all of that took time and energy and commitment, knowing that he was living with dementia. And I think, you can choose to be scared of something. And I talk about this a lot to people. One of my favorite questions to ask groups is, and I'll ask you three, who here is a control freak? Who, put your hand up if you're a control freak. Is it just me? Am I really a control freak?
It's a safe place.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Who here likes
We
to
all have a
control
tendency.
Yeah, who likes to control their
Yeah.
destiny? But if you want to be in control and you have a diagnosis of dementia, then getting support and getting access to services and connecting with peer networks and support groups and leaning into podcasts and info like that, that's life changing, because then you have control over decision making. Now GPs can be a bit of a roadblock here. So some GPs and shout out, I grew up in a very Italian neighborhood. Nobody had dementia. They were just a little funny. But
just forget a few things.
It's not a dirty word. It's not a dirty word. And people like Bruce Willis now, who could have chosen to not share his diagnosis. Those things start to change the narrative. It's sad that we need poster children for diseases, but we do. We had Belinda Emma for breast cancer, Delta Goodrum with leukemia, but dementia is slightly different because the trajectory is a little unknown. So people fear it. But we really need to work with the fact that it's not that you can live well with dementia, because living well is up to an individual's decision making and choice, but you can live a good life. And there's still joy and there's still quality of life to be had. And when people say that at end of life, people with dementia don't have any quality or they're not there, they're still there. Like, they're still them. They might not be able to tell you what you need to hear. They might not recognize you, but who they are as a person is still there. And so we just want to break down that stigma and actually say,
so important.
Let's lean into that. As I said before, we all want to be seen, be heard, be safe. That's what people with dementia want, and that's what we can do for them.
Shout out to that was my experience. I was going to say my experience too. I approached life that way. I was so fearful of that being my prognosis and later in life, and it was actually we were setting up Opal with Kathy Evans and Bill Summers, and Cassie was a clinician, and she had the Eden principle, and I don't know how it came up of our conversation at dinner with the broader team, but I said I'm just so fearful of getting dementia and like forgetting who my wife is and all of that history between us, and she really challenged me on it and had me explain it, and I heard Robin Williams talk about it, and I think unfortunately that led to his decision to go to the path he did. But it's like I feel that maybe men more particular need some of those examples, like we have Michael J. Fox for Parkinson's, and we have there's areas, but dementia has always been one that I've now listened to people and hear where they understand the condition but are still so fearful of that. And I can tell you now, being in the industry for 20 years, there's many worse conditions and diagnosis and pathways to be scared of, but yet dementia just seems to be one that is still carries a stigma. But I fell into that trap originally. But no, I'm glad you shared that, because I think there's a lot more work we can continue to do, but it's about transparency, conversation, podcast, leaning in, all of those that now we really have available to everyone. So
Rob, you can weigh in on Judith. So shout out to Judith Leeson, and she's never one to mince words. I always love her commentary and her posts as well. So her comment is, people have reason to fear dementia. The suffering it imposes on someone who is sentient is appalling, as are the emotional demands of someone who is caring from them. What's your take on that?
Oh, it's spot on. I mean, it almost broke my mother-in-law being a full-time carer for better half of 8 years of the condition, and not, with Lewy body, as as Marie was highlighting, it's every day it's so cruel, because one day you wake up and there's your husband of 45 years and just sharp as a tack. Everything, you could go, oh my gosh, the medication's working, or the brain stimulator is changing the world, and then it just cruelly just takes it away so quickly. And then that journey of the ups and downs is what just wears the cares down. And certainly I think there's there's a point where, at least my mother-in-law was benefited from having a support neck around her to intervene and say, no, we can't keep going down this path. We need to think about you and your life and the next 30, 40 years, because she comes from also of a lot of parents and grandparents who've lived into their hundreds. There's a centurions on that side of the family, but unfortunately, my father, Mike, was he was diagnosed in his 60s, early 60s, so it was just a cruel aspect of that front. So I definitely, the emotional demands are very high, and I think there's a risk to the carers more than ever, especially if it's a spouse, or sometimes even watch daughters and even siblings of the younger dementia residents really play out. And but I think, I guess, push that onto a positive note, and more, I think, maybe a hope and action question. I guess if we fast forward 10 years, Marie, what change would you like most of these, in the Australian dementia system? This would be my change, is to really shift and focus on some of those areas and the vulnerabilities of where the condition we're focused on, but there's a lot of wake that is that's creating a lot of damage around families that are having to manage that. That would be my wish, but what would be your wish to see in the next 10 years?
Great.
Family carers are amazing. I mean, they take a huge load off of our, financial government systems, and the government love family carers, yet we don't really have the right systems of support for them. There's a great quote by Joan Crawford that you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. It's a little bit like the oxygen mask in an aeroplane. You put your own on. Now, people are essentially, we talk about carers, but they're husbands, wives, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, friends first. So we need support structures and systems of care that enable that relationship to be maintained whilst they're providing care as well. And so that means really good support at home, services to be delivered. I don't think we're there yet. I think it's a rocky road to get where we need to go. It is really hard because the number of people with dementia is growing, and there's a zenith of the amount of money that a government is going to pay to support care. The cold and calculated way to look at it, I don't know that the current thinking is the right thinking, and this time next year I'll be interested to see what some of that commentary is for support at home. But I would really want to see more support, so earlier support. So when we talk about early diagnosis, it can be more confronting to get an earlier diagnosis. Sometimes it's easier just to muddle through and pretend everything's okay. But that, as I said, the earlier diagnosis enabled you to perhaps access, drug treatments or drug trials, to get some information and resources, to think about modifying environments, to make decisions. All of that requires GPs to be actively engaged in the diagnostic process and refer on to specialists. And again, the stigma. So if we remove the stigma, then people will think about earlier diagnosis, or even better, it may not be dementia. So if you have concerns about your memory, it could be something like B12 or your thyroid, something reversible. So having those conversations, not being afraid to have them, because those conditions untreated could accelerate other conditions. So, but carers, Judith's absolutely right. It is really hard. And for someone who's living with dementia, now I'm not, so it's easy for me to sit here and say a lot of these things, But for someone living with dementia to be aware that their memory is changing or their behaviors, like those things are happening, that is really hard. And we need to put support systems in place for the person with dementia as well, so they can talk about what's happening for them, what's their experience. And again, what can we do to ensure that they live their best life possible? Where is rehabilitation for dementia? Doesn't exist like it should exist. It exists in very, very, but you're very lucky if you get it. Where's the exercise physiologist? Where's the speech pathologist? Where's the OT? The things that actually slow down some of that progression, and therapists are part of that. So depression will accelerate the rate of dementia. And of course, people with dementia have a higher incidence of depression, because why wouldn't you? Your whole world's changing. You might have been taken out of your familiar environment, or you don't recognize what's going on. So we want to make sure that people are safe and happy and living their best life.
Love that.
Yeah, to them.
This has been a great conversation. I think there was a lot of meat on the bones here, and thank you, Marie. I think it's a good time to wrap up the Zenny, because there are, look, if we ask one more questions, we're going to ask another 10 questions, because everyone's going to comment with their own thoughts. But Marie is going to be on the we've got another show called Road to Positive Aging Summit that is hosted once a month. Marie is a special guest for that. It'll be myself, Mark Ryu, and Tim Henwood so this is in the lead up to the Positive Aging Summit 2026, held in Adelaide on 20th of May. So if anyone wants to go to that,
hometown.
So join us on Tuesday, 16th of December. It'll be 11 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne time, and Marie will be the guest. And anyone who didn't get their questions answered, they can ask again. And they were brilliant questions. But thank you so much, Marie. That was
thank you.
awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I should have had a glass of wine during this. But if people have questions that they really want answered, I mean, I'm happy if you pop into my LinkedIn, DMs.
Well, Marie, you can actually go on after this. The questions still will be there on the comments section, so you can go back in and answer them one by one if you wanted to.
Big topic.
I love that.
Yeah, we'd love to. Is there anything that you'd like to share about that Positive Aging Summit that you're looking forward to sort of sharing as part of that? A bit of a stay tuned, a bit of a teaser for what people can expect.
I'm going to challenge the word positive in positive aging. So what does positive mean? Besides the fact that we're an incredibly ageist society, but you only recognise that the older you get, unfortunately. But what is positive in positive aging? So is the language right? Are we talking about the right things? I don't know.
I love it.
Wow. There you go. So Marie will not be holding back. So stay tuned.
Get to the summit.
Get to the summit. All right, guys. Have a great weekend.
Marie. Pleasure to meet you. And as we say here, all for one and one for all. Things
aged care.
Aged care. Have a great weekend.
Making aged care